Davis. We're back again here at allpointstv.com, and we are ready for the next hour to do a program that you're going to be really excited about. And if you're not excited about it, then try us again next week. We will. It's impossible to be unexciting 2 weeks in a row. So just tune in next week. Let me start off the program. I've been promising this one person that is delivering some long term care in my family, and I've been telling her that I was going to mention her service. We don't get a nickel of this. It's not an advertising, just to announce it for community service, and it's a service being provided called Everlasting Quality Care. And I have to tell you, this is a very quality. Uh, this is a very quality company, a small company, but it's very, very competent people they have in that association of that group. And I'm using them now in my own family, long term care. And the way it works in my with my insurance, you pay the first 60 days of service, then my insurance kicks in and picks up the tab from that point forward. And I thought at one time it was going to be calendar days, but then they told me at the company, at the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, that it's 60 days of service. So I know what they're doing there. They're trying to find out what your what you're willing to pay for on your own before they take over and start paying for it. Because the way you would do it is that you would get lesser care until the company picks it up, and then you want maximum care. So they're guarding against that by saying, okay, let's see what the pattern is, and then they will take over after 60 days of service, not calendar days. I found out. But if you ever need any quality care in Genesee County and Oakland County, I can tell you, and this is not an advertising because we're not getting anything out of it, but I'm passing this along as a way of doing some community service here, and that is, you might want to get a pencil and write this down and give you a phone number. It's called Everlasting Quality Care, and the phone number. You ready? Have to wait for you to get a pen. We're very patient here at the studio. 810 820 2857. And the person that runs that company has been watching the program for the last 3 weeks, waiting for me to make that announcement. Every week I get in here, and I'm thinking about the topic that we decided to discuss, and I want to get to the topic, and I failed to mention the company. But I said I'm going to do that today. I made sure I put it right at the top of my book. I bring the Constitution to the studio, one version of it to the studio every week, and either in a book form or this is the little booklet that contains both the Constitution of the United States and the Declaration of Independence. These are two key documents. These documents are my Bible. I'm going to be mentioning a couple of things here about some things that are going on that are current. But I got to, first of all, before I start anything along the lines of our political discussion today, I got to say something about this fight this past weekend. I can't let that pass without a comment or so about what happened get this now, in Brooklyn, New York. And so if you've been watching what's happening politically in New York, then you have a face of that happening that happened this past Saturday in Barclays Center, where they had this fight between Tank Davis, and he's one of the faces of boxing. If you are a boxing fan as I am, I'm a boxing fan 'cause I like to know the result before I have to stay there a whole season before I find who the winner is. I want to find the winner the same. You have a contest, show me the winner is at the end of the contest. And boxing does that, and I kind of like the idea of having the result instantly after the engagement has occurred. Once the gladiators get in the ring, within 36 minutes of them being out there, because they only have 12 rounds and each round is 3 minutes, After 36 minutes, you know who. After the judges decide who the person is that won, you know who the person is going to have the belt, and that really increased my interest in it because I'm kind of like I like things instantly in terms of I just don't have the time to be sitting there for a whole season and watching you go up and down the field and then have the same teams playing at the end. They played each other during the season. Then you want to have them play at the end to find out who the champion is. Well, I should be able to find out during the season. Then they had the season come to an end, and they have all these games played before you get to the final game. And then at the final game, after all these weeks, you find out who the champion is. I'm not trying to hear all that because I don't have all that much time. Those that have the time, I'm sure you can. I don't think you feel my pain, but I don't have the time a lot of people have. My time is very. I can't believe how busy I am, and the phone ringing, people calling, and just one thing after another. But that fight this past Saturday, I got to tell you something. Anybody surprised at the fact that in the Barclays Center, that's in Manhattan, by the way, New York, anybody said they was surprised by the fact that that guy is walking around with a dollar sign on his forehead because he's a face of boxing guy they call Tank Davis, and he's fighting in the one. I think he's fighting in the. I think is he featherweight or lightweight? Lightweight is 135, and super lightweight is 140. I don't think he's fighting at 140. I think it's 135. And anybody that saw that fight this past weekend, you saw Tank Davis. Now he had filled up because they came to see him fight because it's kind of like a knockout. He has 30 fights and 28 of them entered in knockout. And people, when they go to boxing, they want to see somebody on that floor. And he was laying them out one after the other, and that's what they expected in this fight this past Saturday. That's why they came out and filled that stadium up. But the guy who was fighting had moved up from the featherweight into the lightweight, and I didn't think it was going to be a contest, quite frankly, because when you're moving up 5 pounds and the guy is already steeped in that particular division, and you got to go up there in front of a guy who is a knockout artist, I didn't think it was going to be much of a fight. But it turned out to be more than anyone that I can tell you this. Nobody in Barclays Stadium expected this to come out the way it did because Tank Davis. I don't care what the judges said. I saw the fight with my own eyes, and I'm a pretty good judge. I watch boxing more than any other sport, and I can tell you that there's no way in the world that fight came out a draw. Whenever you have the champion, money belt, and this guy has a dollar sign on his forehead. Anytime you have that guy coming out and the fight comes out a draw, he lost. You don't give the champion there's a moneymaker in the sport, and he's one of the faces of boxing, and he comes out and they couldn't give it to the champion because it was very clear that he had not. We don't want to say here. You can't say that you couldn't say that the other guy lost. Couldn't make that claim because the referee, the fighter, Tank Davis went down on one knee, and the ref started counting, and he stopped. And Tank Davis ran over to his corner and the guy put the towel and wiped some out of his eyes. But he went down on one knee. In boxing, I think those of you who are boxing fans would know this. If any part of your body touch that canvas other than the soles of your feet, that's a knockdown. And when he took a knee, and the announcer said he took a knee, and the referee was counting 1, 2, but then I think he realized I think it was like a Cadillac moment where he was asking himself, what am I doing here? I'm counting down of the champion here. He stopped counting. And the guy went to his corner and put his head through the ropes and got the people in the corner, wiped his face off. I guess he had some in his eyes. And the ref stopped counting. And if that's a knockdown, if they count that as a knockdown, then that fight is clearly out of reach of Tank Davis. And Tank Davis was favored by so many different odd makers who made him the favorite, of course, by a large margin. And that would have been a very big upset. And that's not what they went there to see, and that's not what they're gonna. That's not the outcome that they were going to allow that to prevail unless there was something cataclysmic happen, and they could not cover that up. So they tried to. So, in fact, I understand that the fighter he fought a guy named Roach, and Roach asked the referee, "Why'd you stop counting?" Because he was doing 1, 2, and then he stopped. Everybody's talking about it. If you go on the network, any of the networks, that's what they're talking about today. Then it's unconscionable what happened, but that's it. Just shows you again that that's New York again. New York is. You can see now what Trump has been going through because that happened in Brooklyn, and that's over there where you have Alvin Bragg's over there. And that's the area where he is, and you see what they were doing to Trump in New York, so you can get an idea of what you're up against there, because that bias that's in the political arena entered into sports this past weekend. It's all about money, and you got to run it back again because that guy did not lose. That guy didn't. Tank Davis did not tie that fight, and the mere fact they gave him a title, it shows that he lost. You just couldn't tell. You couldn't. I think you had a riot in there if they had said the other guy lost the fight. I mean, that'd been unconscionable to take a fight he clearly won and then take it from him and that. So they cut the difference up and you got to draw it. I'm not spending a lot of time on it, but I think it's outrageous what happened. That's almost as that is almost as outrageous, but not nearly on the same level of how outrageous it was as it was when Holyfield and Mike Tyson fought. And they had this guy named Mills, who was a referee. I never forget that fight. And here's this one in which Tyson bit the right ear, bit it off. And Mills, who was a quality referee, but you get caught up in the corruption, and he disqualified Mike Tyson. But then the supervisor, whoever that person was, got up on the apron and had a talk with him before he disqualified Mike. He had already disqualified Mike before he canceled the fight. He got up there and talked to him, and then Mills changed his mind, and the fight continued. And Mike Tyson proceeded to bite the other ear, and then that you had to disqualify him at that point. But he couldn't. He was going to lose that fight anyway. But he had already lost to Holyfield in the previous fight, and just his character came through. Didn't have any character. Mills never refereed again because the man did have some integrity before that happened. I think that was really something that just killed his spirit for being in the sport. He never did another refereeing again. And this referee they had this past Saturday is also a very good referee. I've seen referee a lot of the fights. He's a remarkable referee. I know one time Jim Lempley said that he couldn't take his eyes off him because he's such an exciting mover. He moves around a lot in the ring. He's always putting himself in a position to see what's going on, and you can see he's very active in the ring. I remember Jim Lempley said one time, one of the announcers on HBO, you can't take your eyes off of him. That's kind of excitement he would bring as a referee into the ring. Well, he didn't have a good day this last Saturday. I can tell you that because that was clearly this man. That was just Can I say this without you getting mad? You boxing fans, you Tank Davis fans, that was ridiculous. They got to run it back because that was a theft, even though they gave him a draw out of it. It was still a theft. And so much for that. That's my boxing idea for the day. I'm not here to talk about that, but I have to mention that because it's so outrageous what occurred. But it shows you the influence of money in the sports arena, and you've had it in all the sports. And there's certainly you certainly have it in football where they're now realizing Jerry Rice and some of the others are realizing the Super Bowls they played in, those games were rigged. And they did want Mahomes to win this past time, but did you see that defense out there from Philadelphia? When they put on that field, you saw that defense, they weren't buying it. And they kept having that committee in the backfield where the quarterback was, and before the second quarter started, he was taking that ball and running to the sideline, trying to get away from some of that pressure. So they kept having a committee meeting back there where the quarterback was supposed to be standing. You couldn't stand there and deliver that ball, and that was not supposed to happen. Mahomes was supposed to be 3 times. Can you imagine a three-peat? And that would have been bringing a whole lot of interest to football because now you got another dynasty going. Somebody potentially greater than Brady. It's a money thing. Money has a lot of influence in all the areas of American life, and it counts a lot in terms of I don't know any place where it doesn't count. I mean, Pele and Brazil and things like that. Yeah, you pay a lot of money, and you have a certain kind of outcome that you would like to see as a way of riveting you back into the sports. It's the same if it's not a dynasty, then it's like, it could be this team or that team. Which one stands out? And that's the Kansas City team that stands out in football. And he was supposed to be the three-peat this time, but nobody sent the memo to Philadelphia, not to that defense. And they as a collective should have gotten the most valuable player award. Okay, that's enough sports for today. I want to talk about something that happened that you all saw on TV in the political arena. And a lot more information has come out about it too, and you all know what I'm talking about. And that was this situation where Vladimir Zelensky, who is the president of, I'm saying president, but really I want to say the dictator, and that's what he is. Really, he is. We are propping up. We do all this talk about democracy. We're propping up a dictator in Ukraine. This man is an outright dictator. They haven't had an election since 2019.
And even during the time of our wars, when we were involved in world wars, we allowed elections to be held.
We did.
And I know that's the hallmark of, and I think even during the Civil War, didn't we allow?
Yeah, we had the election of Lincoln.
Yeah, I mean, so you couldn't get more of a war-torn country. We lost a huge population eternally because
the country shooting at, we're shooting at each other in the country, and the elections were still held. We have a tradition of that, so you're not going to, at this point in time, you don't have to worry about suspending elections in this country. It would cause a revolution in this country. Our history is a little bit different than other countries.
Well, see, the thing is, we're always supposed to value Ukraine and all these other stuff because he's a bad guy. Although they said he's eliminated political rivals. Zelensky's also done the same thing. They say that we're supposed to hate Putin because he has oppressed the people. Zelensky's done that. He's dealt with wrongly with the church, the Orthodox Church within Ukraine. He's suspended all kinds of stuff from civil liberties. Yeah, he fits the role of a tyrant. I'm sorry. He's
a dictator. And they're trying to make him a Democrat. They're even trying to compare him to Churchill. And I've been writing about it in some of my posts on Facebook. This guy is a thug. We have a history of supporting thugs in other parts of the world. We don't. This idea of these wars are fought over ideology, and we're going to make the world safe for democracy, which was what Wilson was talking about in World War One. And we wanted to do a anti-colonial. Our role was the anti-colonial part we were playing in World War II, where we saw the dissolution of empires at the end of the war. These wars are fought over. Nobody's fighting wars over ideology. They're fighting over trade routes, trade alliances, things that have to do with the economics, the economy. And this war is not any different than that. And we're backing Ukraine, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do that now because the way that Zelensky was acting this past week in the Oval Office. But a lot of information come out about what's really going on here, and I think that this past Sunday, I think that Mark Levine did a great job in the program that he did. He does a little bit of a talk before he introduces his two guests. He always has two guests on his hour formatted program, and he had some two outstanding guests. But before he got to his guests, he's talking about Zelensky, and this is not my area of expertise, but that does not mean I'm illiterate in this area, but it's not my strong suit. But I do have some information in this area. But the expert that I compare my understanding of it with is Jeffrey Sachs and John Mearsheimer. I think they're the two top scholars in the country. And I was reading CISI articles this past week because I wanted to find out what their stake was on it in terms of this war going on between Russia and the United States. This proxy war really going on between U.S. and Russia. But the troops on the ground, the main troops on the ground, because we got troops over there too, just not telling the American people that we over there fighting in Ukraine, but we have soldiers over there fighting and dying in Ukraine. But it's a proxy war. Really, the war is really between Russia and the United States by way of NATO. And I was listening to Mark Levine. I have to give you a little bit of credit here, Mark Levine. I think he really made some outstanding points. A lot of information come out since that time, and one thing that's come out is that before Zelensky went to meet with Donald Trump this past Friday, because Donald Trump thought he was coming there to sign the agreement to stop the war, and then the condition was we're going to use the great minerals wealth of Ukraine to build the nation once the fighting stops. So we're going to use the mineral wealth of the country as a way of putting 50% of what is really made with the minerals being used, put that in an account, use 50% of that in an escrow account, and start the rebuilding. And then the fact that we're over there doing the rebuilding, and that would build their economy up, and as we're building our own economy up. And it would be then that we would give security to Ukraine because we're there. Just by our workers being there would be a deterrent to any attacks by Russia.
See, I didn't even recognize that as a reason why he did that until somebody brought up in a posting because everybody's trashing it. Oh, we expect something and they're going to give up their mineral rights and all this. And yeah, and I didn't even dawn on me. That just shows how masterfully far ahead Trump's thinking. Because I mean, it's like I never thought of that.
Yeah, John.
And I'm pretty astute when it comes to figuring out a way how trying to protect people and stuff and your own assets and stuff. Mm-hmm. And that man just did a masterful stroke with that.
Yeah, he
did. Get what we want. It's not so pernicious or so like self-serving or mercenary. He's saying let's face it. Putin's not going to attack when there's Americans that could possibly be in harm's way. He don't want to stir that pot. Trump did a Drooling Joe. I'm sorry, the Drooling Joe couldn't have even came close to that because he didn't even know where the hell he was at half the time.
Yeah, John, they underestimate Donald Trump. This man did author that book, The Art of the Deal. And one thing I said this last week in an article I did in terms of his uncanny ability to look at things from both sides and understand the interests, the national security interests that both sides are bringing to an issue, so as to see it from their vantage point. I was saying I got off this point a little bit too quickly because we ran out of time last week. But I was trying to say last week that in the negotiations that were going on with the Taliban in Afghanistan, one of the things that Donald Trump understood as he's going there to talk to the leader of the Taliban is to tell the Taliban at the very beginning of the negotiations and the discussion about withdrawal. First of all, he wanted to establish two things. One was that he's not running out of Afghanistan. He wants to have an orderly withdrawal from the country. At the same time, we're not quivering in doing that. We want to move out with strength so that we don't look like we're running out with our tails between our legs. And Donald Trump started out by telling him that at the very beginning. I intended to pull out of Afghanistan. We are definitely going to pull the troops out of Afghanistan, which is what they were fighting about. And if the fighting there at that end, if the other side wants to continue to fight, they just want to kill Americans at that point. And at that point, another dynamic kicks in. What's reasonable is that if you reach your objective without any further killing, and the objective has been reached by the agreement that they are going to leave, which Trump said at the very outset of the negotiations, then the fighting has no purpose in terms of continuing if that's why the fighting is going on. Trump saw that, and that's what he was appealing to. At the same time, he was making it clear that we're not running. It's going to be an orderly withdrawal. We're gonna leave because Trump was saying that we shouldn't have been there in the first place. That was his position. But he wasn't running away from it. They didn't scare anybody. And he wanted to make that clear to Taliban. We were leaving with strength. We're making the decision to do that. It's our interest to do it. It's in your interest to accept the fact that we are leaving. And then that would end the fighting if that's what you're fighting over. But he also told him this, and I said this last week before as we went winding down the program. You know, they're speaking through translators. And there's this thing called traducere, translator traitor. And so you're speaking through a person who's your mouthpiece in the other person's language. And when Trump told him to tell that Taliban leader who's speaking Arabic, tell him that we are going to leave. But in the withdrawal, if we in fact have one American killed during that time period, tell him I'm going to kill him. And the translator hesitated because that's not the kind of diplomatic language that you hear from a president talking to another leader of another country. So he hesitated. And Donald Trump then urged him to do what his job was. He said, tell him. And then when the translation was in fact made, Donald Trump pulled out the picture of the guy's house and got up and left out the room. Because there was really no need to further discuss anything if the objective that you're fighting for has been reached, and that is an agreement has been made, and the pullout is certain at that point because the president said he's going to do it. It's unreasonable then for any Americans to be killed at this point because they're killing them because they're over there, and that's what the fighting is about. He took that out. He took that rug from underneath their feet and pulled it from them. Let's get to the real heart of what this fight is about. If it had been any continued killing on the other side, and they refused to put down the weapon, lower their weapons at that point, then there's something else, and then that's a whole different thing in that case. But Trump was able to see the other side, and when you can see the other side, doesn't mean you're capitulating. You're still negotiating from strength. And the strength was that he told them what the deal was if they continue to fight under the circumstance he just announced. Very smart man. The Art of the Deal is not just a book. And that negotiation is what you saw with him bringing Zelensky over there. See, Zelensky was supposed to come to the White House last week, Friday of last week, to sign an agreement that they've been talking about for a while now in terms of here's how we're going to get it. First of all, we're going to have a ceasefire. And we're going to, after we have a ceasefire, we can then begin to talk in more calm, in a more calm environment. And then we can lay down some agreements that will, in fact, benefit both sides, because the way you negotiate is both sides must get something out of it, because if they don't, then why would one side give all the things to capitulate and then have their country stained by seemingly running and afraid of defending itself? How you sell that to your constituents, because you don't want to open up an avenue through which you're making them vulnerable back. You cannot ask them to do a kamikaze kind of negotiation. You can say people do not understand what Trump is doing a lot of times, because they do not understand that this man, who is so much above these politicians in Washington, D.C., I mean, they haven't seen anything like this in Washington, D.C. in their lifetime. I haven't seen it in my lifetime. Not anything like this, because they don't understand that you have got to go in to negotiate. You don't go in there to dictate. It's got to be my way or the highway. You go in there with the idea that the other side has to go back there and sell that to its constituents. And they keep talking about Neville Chamberlain and things like that. And Neville Chamberlain went back there and tried to sell what he did in Munich in 1938, and go back to England and try to sell that deal. He went there like a weasel. That's what Hitler called him, a weasel. And then he came back and pulled it out when he got to the airport in London, and pulled it out and then waved and said, "I think it's peace in our time, peace my foot." Hitler had already measured him and saw that he could be pushed over. And those tanks were rolling September, let me get the date straight, 1939. Well, Europe is now being overwhelmed by the lightning war in another blitzkrieg war from Germany, because they had sized up the opposition and realized that they were negotiating from weakness. They were doing everything they could to keep from a confrontation, and that weakness was, in fact, it's like a shark smelling blood in the water, and they felt that weakness on the other side. They didn't want to fight. And they are not prepared for what Hitler was preparing for. They should have known that Hitler was preparing to fight, because of what he was doing when he repudiated the armistice that ended World War I. When he repudiated that, they should have known then what was getting ready to happen. But they had not prepared for it. And when 39 came up, they were in no position to resist what was going on, because while he was building up his military, they weren't doing that over in other parts of Europe. And that's why they were able to run right through there like they did. Well, Trump makes sure that he negotiates from a position of strength, but he does not, in fact, disrespect the other side. You know, I've seen it sometimes on television where they'll ask him to discuss something, and they want him to put down, Putin. A lot of them are, Putin is the problem, and this man wants territorial. He's territorially ambitious in Europe. He wants to build up the Soviet Union again and have the Soviet Empire smashing into parts of Europe. I'm saying to myself, boy, people can be so silly. I was looking at Mark Levine's program. The reason I liked it so much last night is I know what Mark Levine was saying is true because I've checked this out myself. I've done. I'm not. This is my area of expertise, but it does not mean I'm illiterate in this area. But what I know about it, and what I've learned by looking at the documents. I read the documents too. I read the CISS documents. I go on their website. And if I have a position after reading my conclusion, I check with somebody that's in that area that's better trained than I am in that area. There are people better trained in that area than I am. I understand that. They're not better trained in my area, but they're better trained in that area than I am. And I have to go and see what they're saying about it. And I have a lot of respect for Jeffrey Sachs, and I have a lot of respect. I probably have more respect for Jeffrey Sachs than I do with John Mearsheimer. I think John Mearsheimer sees things a little bit more in line with the rulers of the United States. I try not to get it caught up into who is the big dog here and who's the little dog. I try to look at the evidence of what's going on. And I think Jeffrey Sachs does that almost to a fault where people think he's anti-American. I was trying to say last week, he's not anti-American. The man he's not committing treason. I tell you who's committing treason. Why do you think here's the treason right here in this thing that happened this past Friday? Why do you think that Zelensky, who really had agreed on two different occasions to go to Washington, he was supposed to go there and sign the agreement. That's why Trump told him come back when he actually pretty much threw him out of the White House. In other words, you're not coming here to sign a pact that brings about peace because you are playing fire with the possibility of World War III. And when he refused to be a player in terms of calming the situation down because of the potential for this thing to get out of control, a little spark can unravel this war. This war can engulf the entire world. Where two military alliances, both of them militarily armed with nuclear weapons. And Trump is smart enough to know it may not be your intent to ignite that, but a spark can occur. Go look at Sarajevo in World War I.
I have a friend who says about Trump that being a president for overseeing a war just goes against his nature. He's not a destroyer. He doesn't like seeing destruction. He's a builder. He's a planner. He wants to see things go further. He wants to see people have good lives, and that's what it's totally contrary to what the role is being the president. Especially our presidents always inherit wars, and they seem to delight it. Our people just seem to be delighted to march from one war to another war.
Yeah, John, you're making a point. This hegemonic view that we have imperial presidents. That's why Trump is looked at as being so outside of the norm, because this man is a purveyor of peace. You think Lindsey Graham is a purveyor of peace? Up there with this war. Look at Lindsey Graham this past week, who was up there talking about how this was embarrassing to the president for him to have done that in the Oval Office. Lindsey Graham, shut up. You're part of the problem.
Well, yeah, he's a senator from South Carolina. Yeah. When North Carolina went through all the hurricanes, I keep on hammering this point, okay? Went through the hurricanes, North Carolina. He was saying, oh, yeah, we have to help them. But we got our friends in Israel. They got people actually trying to kill them. We can't forget about that. What the hell do they have to do with the situation of the people in North Carolina, the state next to yours, you damn moron? Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry for swearing on your show.
But Lindsey Graham is out of. This man is out of touch with reality.
It's all excited about possibly. We got a war. Hey guys, come on! They got a war. We can send our people to. Well, how many billions? Okay, we'll send it to you. I mean, it's ridiculous. We love war.
Yeah, we do. They're not used to seeing somebody like Donald Trump. Some of these persons are saboteurs. I was going to ask this question: why do you think that Zelensky changed his mind when the idea of the meeting was that he goes to Washington? And they signed an agreement, which they had been talking about in the back channels, talking about the fact we get an agreement. First of all, the hard part is to get the settlement, get the war settled, but we can stop the fighting now. In fact, the fighting would never started, and I'm definitely in agreement with Jeffrey Sachs on this point. I saw what happened that ignited this war. What ignited this war, and this is very subtle, and you have to you have to have a little bit of training to catch it. And I have a little bit of training in this area here, but my training is in a whole different area. But you could have any training will kind of get you you train more analytically, and I can see what they were doing. Kamala Harris, and she goes over to Europe, and they dropping this bomb about um, the ambition of Ukraine to join NATO. They kept dropping that NATO name into discussion and things like that. They knew what they were doing. They were poking the bear. They were provoking confrontation. They were not seeking peace. They were seeking confrontation. And let me tell you this, another little point. The reason why Zelensky went there with a whole different attitude is because he didn't go there directly to the White House when he came here. He went to talk to the Democrats. Murphy and let's see, where's Murphy from? Murphy from Connecticut. Somebody should go on his website and read some of the things he's been saying. But Murphy, he's one that's now the mouthpiece for the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party were whispering in Zelensky's ear not to sell this war. You understand something else here. This war is a money laundering operation also. It's part of what Doge is doing under Elon Musk. Elon Musk is now beginning to go out here and look at how all these fingers are in these pies around here, but money is being doled out in large amounts of money through which there are kickbacks going on. That's how they're creating all these millionaires in Washington in the Congress. So a number of different things, have a lot of different fingers out there in different parts of the pie, and then feed the monstrosity they created in Washington, the bureaucracy they created in Washington, D.C. And that's why what Trump is doing right now, he's doing the right thing in terms of trying to bring down the temperature of this war. This war can get out of control very quickly. I was reading those reports this weekend. I read even more reports once I watched Mark Levine's program, because I was pretty much impressed with the way that he handled the issues there. And having read a lot more this last week than I had read before, I had to commend him because I know what he was saying was true. He's right over the target with the comments he was making. And I went and read those CISSI reports, a lot of them, read right through them. I can get a handle on what's really going on here. And I will tell you that what the Democratic Party was doing in terms of talking in Zelensky's ear so they would not sign a pact with Trump, because they don't want Trump to be victorious in this. And if you don't want Trump to be victorious, you don't want the country to come out on top. This is treason. No matter how soft the treason is, it may not rise to the level of the treason defined in Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution, which is the only crime, by the way, in the document that's actually defined in the Constitution. There are other crimes mentioned, bribery, misdemeanors, and things like that. But the ones actually defined in the document in Article 3, Section 3 is treason. So that's because the framers were very concerned about the people that's actually in the government sabotaging the government. And where would they get that idea from? Has anybody heard of Benedict Arnold? I mean, they had to be concerned about that because they saw that here's this guy in George Washington's army. Yeah, they kind of had an idea. This could go. You got to have patriots in your government. I wonder what would they think of us today if you got in our government? Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Presley, AOC, Charles Charles Schultz, and a bunch of them. The Democratic Party, the treason party today in Washington. I'm not saying all Democrats, but there's no doubt about the fact that the treason party in Washington D.C. is a Democratic party. This party is committing treason. And you go and read what Murphy had to say on his website, and you'll see here this man was actually admonishing no deal to be made. This man said this could endanger the entire world. Trump is trying to head off. He told Zelensky this. The reason why which Zelensky went in there emboldened was because he felt he had the backing of the group that already handed out all the money he ever asked for, and when he walked in the door, they started handing money to him. On the short end, they spent $175 billion giving money to Ukraine, much of it which you can't even account for. There's no accounting where the money went. Nobody's counting for that money that they're spending. Where is it going? I tell you where some of it's going, back to the people that's giving it to Ukraine. You might not be aware of this, but that is really why Donald Trump was impeached the second time. You know, they're fumbling around with Burisma, and that's where the Bidens are being paid off. Because Biden was involved in treason in the United States. These people were involved in treason against this country in the Oval Office. But I have to tell you this also. I mean, this is the area I'm in. As bad as that is and can be proven, it will be found if they look under some of those peel back some of their layers of that onion, they'll find out that this was treason at the highest level. But there's nothing you can do about it now under the Constitution of the United States, because the Constitution will not allow it. See, here's the problem that people don't get. There's a process that, see, they keep saying this is the one thing I didn't like about Mark Levine last night. I loved everything else, but here's what I didn't like. They kept talking about the framers would not have liked this and would not have liked that and would not have liked something else and so on, and they would be abhorrent. Now, of course, it would be abhorrent. But if the framers that's not the discussion. The discussion is the framers left you with tools to deal with this problem. And if you don't deal with it, that's not the framers. We need to stop talking about the framers in that sphere of conversation, because the framers laid out the way in which you handle that. They knew it could happen. I heard a person on the air the other day that I said, this guy must be listening to our program, because they were saying this guy was selling down the drain. But he was right in what he was saying, that you have to use the impeachment process in order to bring the president to trial. You must impeach the president first, and you must convict the president, because you cannot. This is not just your average Joe citizen. This is the president of the United States. This is a high stakes office. High stakes office we have in the country. Everybody who can vote in who have the criteria for voting, the age and so on. You can vote for the president. We all have to have an investment in that office. So it's not a lightweight thing. So the framers wanted to make sure that, on the one hand, that office holder who could be pigeonholed into a confrontation with other bodies of the government, and therefore they could bring charges and do things that they should not be doing because of the office and the singularity of the office holder. They could make him yield. They wanted to stop that, and they did both things. They did brilliant. They, on the one hand, they made sure that there was a process to which you could make him answer to for the crimes if there were crimes that were committed against the country. At the same time, you didn't want anything frivolous going on, so you could make him bend to the will of the other two departments because you do have a separation of powers. Somebody was saying that last week. My mouth was dropped. I could not believe this guy was making that point in the Congress of the United States, and they understand that. That was great. He probably the only one that he's probably not here sitting in the Congress understood what the guy was saying. But he's exactly right. They have the impeachment process. You have to go through that process to get to the president and bring him to trial. You can't do what they're doing right now. You couldn't do what they were doing to Trump. Cannot be done. I tell you a good article you got to go and read too. I referred just my article I wrote today. I did an article today, and I quoted some comments. I thought Ann Coulter hit it out of the park in the article she did. Was that in January? She did this article. She did an article in January, I think it was, and she was right over the target. She was sending missiles down there over her target because she was saying that in order for the president to, in fact, carry his duties to enforce the law, he must have some construal of what the law actually is. And therefore, his construal of the law is not any more secondary than the construal of the law of the people who are in the other branches of the government. Yeah, I wrote something today in my post that nobody's ever written before, nobody's ever said before. And what I said was this: it would go unchallenged. And then is there that the way the way the Constitution has been overthrown in this country, and it's been overthrown. The way they overthrew the Constitution of the United States is in fact what this guy was saying in the in what it's what what's that guy's name that did Page 2? He's dead now. I can't think of his name. He would do a Page 1, had a nice deep voice, and now for Page 2, and he would do some news reporting. I can't think of his name. But he was saying, what would I do if I was Satan? He was saying, what would I do if I was Satan? He said, first of all, I would in fact do this to the youth and get them confused. Then I would go into the church and I would get the church. If I were Satan, I would get the church. The idea of Satan in the pulpit, and that's right. That's what you would do. If you wanted to sabotage the country, what you would do is you sabotage the people that's running the country. And the framers want to make sure that they understood was a possibility, and they want to have an out of how to deal with that. And we have a lot of that going on right now. But for Zelensky to have gone over there and talked to the Democrats before talking to the President of the United States, that's treason. That's treason. We have elected the President of the United States of America to negotiate for this country. You might have some disagreements in terms of your internal politics, but when you're speaking to a foreign country, the president does that. And no other official is elected to carry out that responsibility. That's a single responsibility of the President of the United States. And for Murphy from Connecticut to have done that, to bring him in there, now he's talking to the Democrats. That's what emboldened him to go in there and just disrespect the office of the president. That's what Vance is trying to tell this man. and he was so obstinate in terms of getting his way. Look at how many times he talked over Donald Trump. Trump was talking and just interrupted him. Person got on my wall, and it was saying, well, Elon Musk not wearing a shirt and tie. You talking about he comes in with a t-shirt on and some casual clothes on in the White House. Yeah, that's true, but Elon Musk is not talking to a head of state.
Well, he does talk to the president, though, doesn't he?
He's not coming, but he's not representing the head of state.
Oh, that's right too. And another thing is too, it's like, okay, if I were going to see Donald Trump, I don't even own a suit right now. Okay, I've outgrown them. I got too fat for one. I would go buy a suit if I was to go meet
Yeah.
with the president of the United States. I mean, as good as the one I could buy, I can probably purchase one. He's this down with homey kind of thing that he's doing when he dresses like that is just so disingenuous because he's
He is.
not out in the trenches. He's not out in the trenches. He's all partying.
Yeah,
I mean,
I would. I think you have to show a protocol in the high office, but you have to understand that there are different places that you must, in fact, insist upon that. If you're representing a country and you are the embodiment of your nation, then out of respect for the adversary that you're going to speak with and the country that you're coming from to speak to him, then you have to represent that in your demeanor and your attire. That's why you don't use undiplomatic language. And you certainly have to dress up to the part. Just like go look at how to dress at Yalta. There's a withered old Franklin Delano Roosevelt had a cloak around. You could tell the man doesn't have long. He's very, very sick at this point. And after Yalta, he has one more year. But he was you could tell he was very, very broken. But underneath that cloak that he had on, and that like a little coat type thing that he had on, there was a tuxedo. I think Churchill. They didn't have de Gaulle. They didn't have Charles de Gaulle there. It was Yalta was Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin. And but look at how now. I don't think Stalin was appropriately dressed, but you look at how Churchill was wearing, business attire, and Roosevelt had the report I read, and I forget which one it was, but one of them had a tuxedo on underneath the clothes, underneath the outer which you can see on camera. Because this is how you, in fact, show your respect, even if you disagree with everything they're doing. And even if you're sitting there with Stalin, they didn't agree with Stalin, but you show some respect for the fact that there is a man representing a nation. And I think that this is, I really do think this is disrespectful. One of the person wrote me and said, there's one person get on my post all the time and said, well, Elon Musk was not wearing blah blah blah. Yeah, I understand that, but that's a different proposition. I'm talking about when you come out. If Elon Musk goes as a representative of the country, if they let him do that, then I'm for I'm for not impeachment, but I'm for some type of a sanction on the office holder. You should not allow the country to be represented that way. And the president should not be using profane language. That's another part of it. You're representing the nation. You can't be out there, using DAM words like that. You can't do that. And that's out. No matter what your language is in the comfort of the White House building. Outside, when you're meeting with a head of state, you don't do that. And Elon Musk, if he goes and represents the nation, he's not doing that now. He's standing inside of the government, and he's very casually dressed and things like that. If they ever send him somewhere, it'd be very interesting what happens there. But they should not let him go and represent the United States, looking the way he looks inside the Oval Office. I can tell you that. That's different. It's a different standard. And Zelensky should not be coming over here in no casual attire. That's disrespectful. But every time he came in and they threw money in his hand. You don't think any of that money was coming back to them? It was too easy. He was getting it too easily. They were getting so much money. Carson made a comment a couple of weeks ago and said he went over to the Alps and found out. He said, I didn't go over there to ski. I just went over there to do some research and see what was going on. He found everybody was spending big money over there, had all kinds of money they were spending. Everybody that had money were from Ukraine. And his point he's making was that's our money they're spending over there. That's right, because they're dumping money on him.
There's no accountability for it. He's admitted he doesn't know where that money went.
Yeah. Not all of it, because a lot of it is coming back here in the palms of these politicians. That's why you look at how they've been responding to that. They take their children over there when they were going to negotiate with used to be called Formosa. You know, Taiwan today, but before 49, before it became Taiwan, it was Formosa, and they changed the name because you want to get You're now talking about a more nationalist type of thing. Chiang Kai-shek and that group, they went off the mainland China and ran off because of Mao Zedong, and run off there and went into the nationalist government, went off the shores, and Mao Zedong took over. But when she went over to negotiate with Taiwan, because they were trying to get protection from the United States because they wanted to make sure that we had their back, she knew that she had them in a bind, and she's as the Speaker of the House went over there. But you know who she took over there? Her son. Just like when Biden went over there on Air Force One, he had his son with him. They knew what that was. That's a rub some skin here. I don't mean give me some skin. It means rub some paper. And that's what she was doing. They put their children there to avoid the impropriety, the specific impropriety of the money coming directly in their own hands. But if it's placed in the family hands, it's not, one hand removed from your hand, it's still your hand. You might call him the big man, but what they're talking about is they're talking about Biden. You can't figure that one out. Where have you been? They don't use his name in the documents because it was not to be. You don't mention the name, but that's what they're talking about. That money was going to Biden. Biden was involved in treason. This man's a traitor. I'm not here to play no games. This country was betrayed by the Biden administration. But now that they didn't do anything about it when he was president, there's nothing they can do about it now. I'm sorry. The Constitution does not allow it. It's not allowed. The framers gave you the tools to use to bring these persons in for the wrongdoing they're doing, the wrongdoing they're engaged in, and to make them heal and stand down from it and, in fact, suffer the consequences of their action. But you cannot do it under all circumstances. There are specific circumstances that got to be met in order for that to occur. And it's very plain as day in the Constitution of the United States. I don't know if they know it or not, but there's nothing they can do about it now. If you don't use the tools, don't come tell me about the framers be upset and the framers be crying and all that. Yeah, they be upset about it but what they be upset about is that they put particular time into making sure they constructed a document that would sustain the nation under attack, both domestic. I'm saying this in the pledges they take when they uphold the Constitution against threats, both domestic and both international and domestic.
Both foreign and domestic.
Foreign and domestic is what they say. Yeah, because the threats can come from either direction. But the internal threat is more dangerous because I don't agree with this part of it, but it's pretty close to being true. That if there's no enemy within, the enemy without can do you no harm. That's what they say. That's not really true. If there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can still do you harm.
Remember,
The stronger you are, and so on.
remember, a ship in the sea is not sunk by the water it's on top of, but it's actually it's sunk by the water that comes into it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways of approaching it, but the framers were very careful about making sure that the nation was protected, that there were tools you could use to maintain the integrity of the sovereignty of the nation. They wanted to make sure they did not leave us without an umbrella of protection. You have to use that with the tools they gave you. If you don't use those tools, you can't go back and start blaming them about how they'd be upset. They'd be upset about how they created this monstrosity. The other thing I want to talk about, which is before we get off the air, I wanted to mention how you can use the Constitution. Because when I said today in my post that the Constitution has been overthrown in the United States, and the way they did it was in a very insidious way. There are two ways in which they have used the Constitution to overthrow the Constitution. One way in which they use it, of course, is to add to it so that it stops being the document that was created by the framers. And that's what they've done. That's why I said earlier in a discussion we've had here at the studio before, I said that you have the 16th Amendment and the 17th Amendment that were added to the Constitution. You can overthrow it by, in fact, changing it in the amendment process to the point where it has been altered in such a way that it no longer fulfills the responsibility for which it was created by the framers in Philadelphia in 1787. That could be one way in which you would do it. But here's another way you can do it. And that's in Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2. Let me read this to you real quickly before we get off the air. I want you to read something. I want you to see something very carefully here. Then you'll understand why all these courts are jumping into the fray and dictating to Trump what he can and cannot do. These little picking units of government, these judges down here, and so on and so forth. Here's how they're getting away with that. Listen to this right here. This is how they get away with that. Down here in this part of the document, this is in Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2. And down here where it says this. And without my glass, I'm going to be able to just get to the point here. But the Congress may by law vest the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the president alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of departments. You see, the Constitution authorizes 3 branches of government. And they intended to have those 3 branches separate and co-equal as a way of checking and balancing out each other so that neither one would get too much power. But the wiggle room is in that part I just read. The Congress can set up inferior courts. And what the Congress did was set up these inferior courts that the president was going through. Those were inferior courts that were set up, not the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is an appellate court. It went to these inferior courts, and Congress has created these courts, and they're now ordering the president of the United States around. And that, my friends, is an overthrow of the Constitution of the United States. Using the language in the document to overthrow the document. And they're telling the president what he can and cannot do, who the person vote for, and they are telling him what he can and cannot do in these inferior courts, and that cannot be done. Okay, I want to come here and say that because nobody's saying that, but that's the point. And that is really why we have Napolitano's view of the Constitution being overthrown, and Woods also made a point saying who killed the Constitution. That's what's killing the Constitution, using the document against itself. Okay, let me get out of here. Till next week, we want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.